All right, next item is public comment. You have any public comment online?
Seeing none online,
Anyone in the room? Moving on, item 3 is the consent calendar. 2 items, minutes from the last meeting and the resolution. Any committee member want to pull any of the items for discussion? Anyone in the audience have anything? We have any public comment online?
seeing none online,
Then I would entertain a motion.
Second.
Do we do roll call?
you can do a voice vote since we're all in person.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Vote. What?
nothing.
Oh, yeah, all
Thought she would vote, and I was thinking. All right, motion carries. Item 4, Valley Rail Communications Plan update.
Jerry got an update from supervisors meeting and building attorney shortly.
Oh, okay. You're on.
Good morning, still morning, so good morning. Me, the gentleman of the Public Relations Manager for both the Rail Commission and the Joint Powers Authority. Today I'll have an opportunity to update you on our Valley Rail Communication Plan. And it looks like there's a little bit of a transition there, but before we dive deeper into the plan, I wanted to highlight that there's been since the announcement of Valley Rail, we've been working for the last several months to put a communication plan together and make sure that we address all of the priorities that go into announcing a massive project like this. And so with that said, the goal of the communication plan is to support the successful delivery of a near-term and long-term program priorities by aligning stakeholders, building public awareness, and maintaining transparent, consistent engagement across all phases of the program. And what we're hoping to get with this communication plan is to ensure that not only that the Valley Rail gets highlighted and is visible, but both the Rail Commission and the Joint Powers Authority as well. We want to make sure that all of our key partners, our stakeholders, decision makers are all informed, engaged, and supportive of what we're trying to do. Definitely want to make sure that the public and our partners are, there's no confusion in what the plan is. And also want to ensure that the important part is we're attracting future riders as we're building this out. So we're not just building this out because we're expanding service. We want to let people know that the service is coming and that we would use this. And then finally, we want to make sure that both board member, agency leadership, and staff are equipped to serve as a former ambassador. So as you always do, you get a lot of questions about Valley Rail. We want to make sure that you have the tools necessary to share that information. And so kind of some of the key goals or the platforms that we're hoping to build and sustain this public confidence in this program is to make sure that we have proactive outreach materials. And we're outreaching proactively as well to stakeholders throughout the region. We want to make sure that we have well-timed stakeholder and legislative engagement. So there's a huge component of this is a lot of public funds are going into this project. So we want to make sure that those stakeholders at all levels of government are engaged and they understand what's going on. And we also want to make sure that we use the media as our platform for us to highlight all the great work we're doing. And so that means having a better relationship with some of our media partners. And also, as these massive construction projects happen, there's a lot of things that could develop. And so we want to make sure that we are aligned and quick on our response, and we're also aligned on what we're going to say to these folks. And so just before kind of dive a little bit deeper, I want to make sure that this is kind of a bucket of a lot of the audiences we're engaging, and there's going to be, I'm sure, some that will develop over the course of time that aren't listed on here. But of course, you, our board members, will be a priority to make sure that you guys are informed and updated as to what's going on with Valley Rail. And the purpose of that is so you are also ambassadors. So it's great that within your realm of what work we're doing, but once again, your constituents will come up to you and ask you questions. Make sure that you are really prepped for that. Of course, our state and federal partners, our host railroads, local governments, public safety, definitely the communities that are directly impacted, but also the general community that will be our future riders as well. Of course, our business advocacy and community influencers, and of course, the industry and transportation partners. I will note that some of these conversations are already happening. So even though the communication plan is kind of developing, an example for Chris and David, they're really engaged with our host railroads, and so we get weekly updates on that. We've met with state and federal partners, both myself, Chris, and other members to kind of update, get support on some of the money that's being moved around, but also giving an update on what's going to happen in the future. So just want to make sure that the plan is to engage, but we've already been doing that because some of the stuff is time sensitive. And so, how we want to do that is what I mentioned earlier is we want to make sure that we have messaging that's consistent. And so we've been developing kind of a standalone messaging framework document that will essentially also provide universal messaging. It breaks down the phases of for our program delivery. It's going to have separate messaging for different regions. So, the messaging for Sacramento definitely looks different than it does for the Bay Area, for example, right? Because there's more construction activity happening, for example, in the Sacramento region as opposed to the Bay Area. So I make sure that those regional messages are differentiated, and you could kind of jump, depending on who you're talking to, you have clear idea of what they want to hear and what you could tell them. And of course, we want to make sure that there's a frequently asked questions section, because that's where, we get a new one every day, whether it's from a member of the media, the public. So we want to keep track of that. You may have some questions that pop up that, we'll have answers for all the questions that are being asked of us. And so with that messaging framework, we're hopeful that then we could make it something easy for us to just copy and move into our content. And so instead of having different flyers that different departments are working on, we'll have thorough messaging for the following kind of kit that we're building out. So we'll have kind of a universal external presentation deck that anybody could pull, and if you have a meeting, you could present that. That's staff and anybody else that needs it. Definitely program materials and fact sheets, as well as project specific. So we'll have something for example, for Midtown, something for Elk Grove, something for Natomas, and definitely a digital media and website, digital media website, and then a social media kind of strategy, and make sure that's consistent as well. Of course, press releases to let the media be updated on what's going on, and then also kind of an email program and project update list to keep everybody informed beyond stakeholders. And so kind of diving a little bit deeper on the digital infrastructure, and a lot of this is in progress as well, but making sure that we have a Value Rail webpage, interactive, accessible, and definitely mobile friendly. A lot of people use it on their phones. Definitely an email strategy for stakeholders, media, and community members, and writers, current and future. And also want to make sure that we want to monitor communications at our way as well too. We've already had some local businesses that are really interested, very supportive of some of these plans, but really interested on what it means for them and their customers and their neighbors. And definitely both the organic social media posts and the paid advertising to highlight both what we're planning to do and what's going to be happening in the future. And definitely, developing video, something easy that we could deploy in different methods, whether it's presentations, online, social media. And then, of course, want to make sure that we have a very thorough approach to how we engage with the media. Make sure we're proactive on having major milestones being recognized in media. Definitely want to build strong relationships, and I think we've already started doing some of that. An example is Midtown, through maybe one of our board meetings, that kind of got out in the region that this was coming, and so got a lot of responses. Me and Chris for a couple of days were on the phone and in front of our Zoom doing interviews. But then we built some great relationships, and they were, let us know when you guys are back out here. We want to go through a walking tour, so stuff like that. And then of course, want to make sure that we have the right people to speak about this. And I serve as a PIO for the agency. David jokes that I can't always be everywhere at the same time, but want to make sure that when people are available, both our leadership and our board members, that you guys know what to say in front of the media. And as well as want to make sure that we connect local projects to broader regional benefits, right? And so some people will ask, what's the station? And so want to make sure that media beyond the impacted areas understand what this means for our region. And definitely want to leverage milestone coverage to reinforce the program momentum, that people know that this is moving forward. And so want to talk more, dive a bit deeper on particular projects and what the plan is around project outreach for both communications and direct kind of engagement with the community. You'll see kind of a general timeline. We have 90 days, 30 days, 7 days during construction, construction completion, and the service launch as well. And I'll dive a little bit deeper into the following slides. And it's kind of the 4 project phases that we're looking at is the pre-construction setup, pre-construction engagement, procurement, construction incident communications, and pre-opening, completion, and launch. And so without going through all this, you'll see kind of on the pre-construction side, we want to make sure that we're doing outreach to our elected officials and the general community affected. Also, as we're kind of going to the pre-construction phase, and after we do that first set of outreach, we want to make sure that we have a broader outreach, like a town hall, more of a physical ceremony for the general public, that they understand what's going on, so we get some media coverage. And of course, during construction, want to make sure that people are updated that this project is moving forward. Doing site walks with maybe stakeholders, both internal and external partners as well. And then ensuring that we have a plan in place for in case an incident happens, that we are reactive, we know who needs to be contacted, what, if something does happen, the process is smooth and easy for you to get that information as well. And then, of course, building up to more of the excitement of pre-opening the station. There's some of the station and some of the sites will have a gap of when the facility would say be complete, but then the service will launch. So we want to make sure we track that and recognize those milestones as well. And then so kind of a little bit of a more of a deeper example of a particular project, and do not worry, I will not go through all these bullet points, but roughly looking at and not all the projects will have this, but it's more of like a menu of what we could do for projects. So holistically, if we're looking at a project, we could 90 days before, we're doing things like launching the web page, establishing kind of a hotline or an inbox, and make sure that some of our stakeholders that need to be briefed are made aware. Can kind of continue that effort at 30 days before construction. We'll have some town halls, focus a lot more on digital media and awareness campaigns, and ensure that media is starting to get some updates on what's going on as well, and then kind of pursue all the way up to 7 days before construction, right? Building on that momentum during the starting construction, doing the groundbreaking, like I mentioned, continue to do updates for the community and stakeholders, ensure that we're responsive to any concerns that the public may have, and then all the way up to the completion and service launch will then include ribbon cutting, the festivities, and then eventually getting folks on an actual train to a new connection to the region. And so for us to kind of measure what some of this stuff looks like, the goal is to hit everything, but I know sometimes, different factors pop up, but for us, success will look like, make sure that, of course, our stakeholders are informed, aligned, and supportive of what we're trying to do. Want to make sure the public understands the value of our benefits. Want to make sure that we get consistent, accurate, and positive media coverage, and that's kind of time back to make sure we have this good relationship with our media folks. Successful milestone, the service launch communications, celebrations will be great. Definitely want to make sure that, Valley Rail is an amazing program, but we want to make sure they understand where it's coming from. Both the Rail Commission and JPA will be visible, as well as our board members and our leadership. And definitely, as we're doing all this, then we'll get support, and hopefully we'll get support from our community of business elected leaders, and then that will lead to expanded public stakeholder and legislative support, whether that's more opportunities for grants, funding opportunities, or general legislative support to help move the agency and our service forward. And kind of just a little bit bow on the end of this, and this is kind of all the stuff I talked about into part of the communication plan, the messaging framework that and I will add that I think you could have picked 4 better people to work on this. We have 4 comms guys: David, Chris, myself, and Marcus. And so maybe there's a tug of war sometimes, but we got great messaging about this, what we're planning to do. Programmed comms plans, which will then highlight the overall program, some of the activities I talked about. Project-specific comms plans, we dive deeper into the example for a Midtown Station or a siding project. Definitely the online presence that will be activated. And then all the resources I mentioned, PowerPoints, one-pagers, and whatever other media that may be needed. And so with that said, happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Unpredictable. That's good. It's interesting because this coming online with a couple of plans that our city just approved, the economic development and the downtown plan in which rail plays a role. So it did make me think, and I know, I'm sure as part of the business and community stakeholders, you're thinking about this, but the economic development managers, departments, directors are really critical in our city. It's about increasing access to higher paying jobs. So, we had Luis that came when we did the event in Sacramento for the Gold Runner, and it made a difference with him to better understand why rail is important. So I think that in your standard list of who's to invite, or don't always leave it up to the city, because they'll pick their transit person or their public works, but they may not think any further than that. So I would encourage economic development because it's important there. It's also important for site selectors. So the county-wide San Joaquin partnership would probably be another one, getting Bob Gutierrez or one of his staff to participate in all of these is important because, again, rail is important to some people, businesses that expect that as a commuter service for them. And then I would say that it's just like I asked earlier for Chris, we have you for our World of Wonders Museum. Cultural institutions can depend on rail, whether it's school kids or people coming on the weekend to visit. So the visitors associations and the organizations are sufficient, making sure that they have the information. It's their job to get it to any of the other cultural institutions. And then the last thing I would say is I had discussions with my fire chief about rail and about one of his biggest concerns is what if there's derailment, what if there's an emergency and somebody needs to get off the train. So I would say that in the instance, obviously, there's an opportunity for communication. But when we do the events, always inviting the fire and police chief to those events because of the fact that we're creating relationships with them because down the road, they need to be, tied to us directly and joined at the hip if it comes to any response issue. So other than that, I think it's great to be planning and really appreciate your team's work.
Thank you. And just want to remark on some of the stuff you mentioned. Yes, we're planning to have a very comprehensive list and happy to share with you when the time's appropriate. And and the last point you touched on, right? We see a lot more activity up in the Sacramento region, but as I've been going up and down the corridor, we're letting people know that this stuff is coming and that we like their participation well, right? Somebody from different part of the corridor because it is a regional benefit. And to your point, even though some of the physical activities may not be happening in their cities or their regions, it's very important to highlight what this means for Central Valley and beyond. So thank you.
On the public safety point, the briefings with the public safety first responders in the new areas where the training operating will be part of the operations plan. That'll be something we cover. We do that now with our current first responders, but in the new area that will be operating will be the same.
We do have a comment online from Supervisor Frieza.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So I love that we're preparing on the communication side. The funny part is I sit here and think about it. If we just have one groundbreaking, just one, we'd have a lot to talk about. And I look forward to that, to get in front of it. You guys, I wanted to ask about the website. You had individual you were going to have individual web pages for each station and what's happening there. Is that already up? Is that already built or is that in concept?
We're pretty close. And so we're going to layer them out a little bit. So we'll have a holistic Valley Rail page as well as project specific. And so some of that stuff will be coming online pretty shortly. A lot of it is working with our both our passenger experience marketing team with our capital team to make sure we have the correct information up, the accurate information up. And so promise to let you know when that's launched. And I think it's going to be pretty soon here.
Okay. And then you mentioned something about influencer, and is Pat Hume an influencer?
Absolutely. So the Sacramento is the influencer. A lot of TikTok dances and all that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Some things can't be unseen. I would just add on kind of to Vito's point there, that it's great to be prepared about the talking points and all of that, but we are in the business of delivering trains that run. And so as these projects start to come online, it's gonna cause a lot of curiosity, it's gonna cause a lot of questions, and it's gonna cause a lot of expectations. And so I want you to repeat a little mantra every day when you wake up. Under promise, over deliver, under promise, over deliver, under promise.
Amen. Amen.
Right, thank you. But no, great plan. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Anything online?
Seeing no comments online?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item 5 is the Valley Rail Program work stream update.
Thank you. I'm gonna get it started,
Sorry, have a good time.
but I'm not going to do this presentation alone. So a few meetings ago, we shared with you a slide that looks similar to this, where we have broken up sort of the complex nature of delivering the Valley Rail program, particularly with the direction that you provided to staff into individual work streams. Now, these work streams are owned by members of the Rail Commission and SJJPA team. And our intention at that time, and you've sort of seen the fruition of that, is that when you receive updates like from us, that will sort of be in this format, right? That you kind of would have an expectation from staff to hear about all of the elements that it takes, not just to break ground, but to deliver service, not just to do that, but to coordinate with the host railroads, like all the things that it takes to deliver this project. And that's really kind of the top portion of the work streams. The program management is, how do we organize all of the work to get us to running a train on day one? So in this presentation, what you're going to hear is from each of, well, I'm going to do some for those that aren't here, but so we'll talk a little bit more than I will in the future. But really a kind of a quick hit update through all of these areas. And then, feel free obviously to ask questions or to get more detail as we go through them. But we'll start with program management, which is in sort of my responsibility. One of the things that we had promised was that we would really put together a program management scheme that covers all of these work streams together. So we have put that together. This is sort of a screenshot of the tool. You can see sort of it's hard to, I don't know how much you can see, but trust us, right on the left side, like that is all of the work streams. And what you're seeing is sort of like a timeline view of all of the deliverables that are meant to be delivered in that stream. So these are everything from major items like an IFB going out the door, but also some of the individual little things that tend to trip you up, like as you get through program management, like, oh, we had to come up with a new forecast for X service, or we really needed to execute that MOU with a city or a jurisdiction. So we're really putting together all of those intermediate tasks to ensure that from a program management perspective that we're aligned internally and that we're aligned not just in concept but to deliver, right? That's really the focus. So we really have been furthering this setup and getting us organized. And under that organization now you'll hear from all the work streams and kind of what's been happening since we've talked about it a couple months ago. And I'll hand it over to Dan.
Good morning. Good to see you. So we have a number of efforts that are underway that are supporting us doing a service plan that aligns both our services, Gold Runner and A services, and aligns the timetables for these. I'm going to kind of go through the key tasks we've been doing recently. We've been supporting the Valley Rail rephasing that's been underway, doing a number of different options to be looking at for future expansion of the Valley Rail service, doing schedules for different alternatives, doing ridership forecasts, and projecting vehicle mile travel and GHG reductions for a variety of different options to help with decision makings about how to move the Valley Rail program forward. In addition to the forecasts for the scheduling and look at the phasing, we also are going after a lot of funding, and so each of our funding grants does require us to do forecasts to support the benefits that are needed to demonstrate for that particular application. And most recently, we've done the forecast year for the build application that was done in April, the TERSIP application, that was a large one in May, and then we're working on the Christie application we submitted later this month. Our Gold Runner throughway bus network is a critical part of the overall Gold Runner service. It's a huge network with 13 routes, goes throughout the state of California, really connecting our passengers throughout the state. It's a key part, looking at that network is a key part of our service planning. And so we do have a Gold Runner service through a bus study underway. It's begun recently. We today will be launching our new webpage for the through bus study. And we'll be starting initial public outreach to let them know that this work is underway and getting initial feedback from the public. We do have some deliverables that we have will be on that webpage as well. We're looking to actually have the study first in draft form by August and get additional public comment on that. And then looking for approval, hopefully at our September San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority meeting for that report. So we've done relatively quickly, completed in early fall. We also, both of our service, how we connect with and integrate with future high-speed rail in the valley is a key part of our service planning. And so we have been communicating regularly with the high-speed rail authority. We are meeting, we have liaisons with them that we talk regularly with, and then also monthly meetings with their chief of staff. Most recently, over the last several months, we've been really focused on getting the construction agreement and the fire marshal permit completed for the Madera Station relocation project. This is an agreement with the high-speed authority, which is needed to enable us to start with the bid and start construction on that project. It's needed because most of the land that the station will be on is owned by high-speed rail. If you look at the figure to the right, this is not our figure. This is from the high-speed authority's approved business plan, which was approved on the first this week. And a key thing to note in the business plan is they do have now an assumption that the station in Merced would be south of downtown, and the connection with the Gold Runner service and service expected to start in 2033 would be at Madera Station rather than Merced. And then this is my last slide. We will be doing service planning studies for both Gold Runner and ACE. These will be very coordinated and aligned. And then they'll also be looking at how we connect with other services as well through this. We are in the process of bringing on the consulting team that will help us on the ACE side. We do have a consulting team on the Gold Runner side. We want to make sure these are done concurrently. We're looking to start this in August or September timeframe and having it complete by June 2027. The figure that you see on the right, this is a streamlined diagram. It's an example of one of the things that we do use to help us with our operational planning. And while it looks a little messy, each of those lines is a representation of one of our train trips. That helps us sort of chart where these trains would be over time. And the key thing about that is looking at where the trains meet in opposite directions. We want to make sure that those are meeting at places where we have double track segments, and it helps us figure out how to reduce infrastructure needs in the future as we expand services. Let's turn it over to Christine.
Hi, good morning. So thank you so much for the opportunity to communicate progress that we're making in capital delivery. What you'll see on this slide and the next are the projects that we have in phase one. Starting with the one that is planned to go to construction first, to be our Midtown station. So overall in phase one, we're about 90 to 100% on track design. Our Midtown project is right now at 100% track design with review for UP. This is one of the last steps in getting that portion of the project done. And then we also have revisions going on Del Paso siding for their track and on Elk Grove on their track. Phillips siding, which is actually on the next page, the Phillips siding, actually the project, their track design is complete and approved. So making good progress in that sense. These capital projects are complex and they have multi-components to them. They actually have four. Many of them have four components. Not only track, but they have station, obviously for our station projects. They also have roadway and a certain amount of structure work, either pedestrian overcrossing, a retaining wall that helps to hold up the track, the sub-ballast, the ballast. And so there are other portions besides just the track that we're moving forward. Example on our stations, our three stations, Midtown, Elk Grove, and Natomas. They're all working on those 100% plan sets for the station portion. And Midtown, we've got the roadway complete and approved, we've got the structures complete and approved, and same for Elk Grove. So from an engineering standpoint, from a plan standpoint, those are moving along nicely. Now. Oops. Yeah. But these projects are a lot more than just the engineering design and the technical specifications that go along with it. We are focused on getting to construction, which is the timeframes that you see here in the dark blue circle with C on it. Some of the things that we have to think about, including and to incorporate into the engineering design, is a construction sequencing. How are we going to build and maintain freight operations? One of the examples that we have is that Elk Grove station, where we're going to be putting the station and the platform in the middle of the track, or middle of the two tracks, where currently we only have one. So it's a little bit of a sequence and phases to move the track over, put the station in the middle, move the train operations over, put the overcrossing on. There's a lot of complicated steps that we think about in the design phase so that the contractor can successfully build it. But we also have to think about how the projects work together or get built together. And an example of that would be our Elk Grove and our Phillips siding. So you see that even though Phillips siding, the track design is complete, it is connected in its construction with Elk Grove, which is why we have to think about the sequence of maximizing concurrent work and minimizing the delay so that we can get to that service, construction complete and to service. Some of the other elements that we have to do during the capital delivery prior to construction, revalidate our environmental document. We cleared environmentally all of these projects a number of years ago. But since it's been over 5 years, we do have to do an environmental reevaluation prior to going into construction. We also have to verify that we have all the right of way acquired and the easements secured before we get to construction. We need to have ability to build on the land and use the land that we need to build these projects. We have a couple of permits you see here, section 401 and 404. These are water quality permits required as part of the projects. And then we have to ensure that the projects are going to be compliant with all of the local, state, federal laws. And so one of the newer things that we're doing is we're adding EV chargers to parking lots at the stations because they are required by recent building code change. So those are some of the updates that we have. You can see we're focused on construction starting in the earlier part of 27 and going into 27, 28. But a few projects that we already have in construction or soon to be in construction. CP Lake to Escalon is a BNSF project. It is about 90% complete now. And we're expecting substantial completion next month on this project. Oakley Station, Amtrak is completing their IFB, their bid package, and we're looking to start construction, release bids end of this month and start construction in October. BNSF is leading this project for us. And the Madera Station that Dan had mentioned earlier, we're moving into the state fire marshal review and approval, and then going into the bid phase for that. So, update, I'll go ahead and hand over to.
Thanks for speaking. So I'm going to do my best Momo impression, so we'll see how I do. So she is overseeing the funding strategy work stream. And really, these are the three priorities that sit under her work stream right now, which is fully fund phase one Valley Rail projects, which we've been talking a lot, like during the committee meetings, ensure that we execute the capital funding strategy for the future Valley Rail projects. And those really were the two pillars of the direction that you provided us, right? Was fully fund like phase one, and then for Stanislaus and future projects, we gotta find a funding strategy for this. Those are the two pillars. And then in addition to that, which is just as equally as important, the other two is to ensure that we have an operational funding strategy for the trains that will operate like on the corner. So these are really the three pillars. I'll walk through each one. So on the fully funding phase one construction projects, really the time has been spent really on the reprogramming of the TIRSIP funds. And this really has taken a really intense amount of coordination with our state partners. So with Caltrans, CalSTA, and CTC. This is taking the direction from you, that a lot of the slides that you have seen, translating those into sort of like their world and explaining, hey, this is how the funds are going to be reprogrammed. This is our proposal. This fully funds a segment that's going to have train operations and really gaining their understanding and their support, so that as the item goes to the CTC, that sort of flows through that process seamlessly. We've been having a lot of this back and forth, a lot of good discussion with Caltrans, with CalSTA, and we're looking for that reprogramming request to go to CTC at their August meeting. So that'll be a major milestone for this work stream and for the program in general. We've also really from a phase one perspective been focusing on the gap that we identified in the Newark Albright siding project, which unlocks the 5th round trip for ACE. And so, as was discussed previously, there was a submitted grant application for the TIRSIP Cycle 8, which does include that project. So that would be sort of the remaining funding needed to fully fund phase one. On executing the sort of capital funding strategy, we have provided some of these updates to you as we've been going along, but we did submit a build application for the Modesto station. We're developing the Christie application, which we call shifts. The PEM team and the PGP team, they come up with these great little names for all of the funding applications, and then we have to somehow remember them all. But the shifts application includes both the Lodi station as well as the Cabral track extension. Now, some of the funding streams, they are dependent upon what service is operating on that infrastructure. So Christie, you need to have intercity service. And so that's why Lodi and Cabral are included there. And those are for the Gold Run round trip that's meant to operate. So we're not able to propose sort of the Stanislaus County projects in that funding stream. So we're trying to use all the opportunities that we can. And then we really have been digging into the CIG program, which really is meant to focus on Valley Rail South. It's sort of a complex program that requires some new forecasting methodologies to get into the program. So staff have been evaluating that, making sure that we're well set up to participate and compete for those, but it's sort of like a new start type program. On the operational funding side, we have been over the course of the Valley Rail program having discussions with our Sacramento partners around what it looks like for ACE to come into some of the existing funding streams within Sacramento County as well as the city. And so we've been continuing to have those discussions now with, sort of the clear direction from you. Some of those discussions now have, very clear timelines. So we've been discussing with SACOG around CMAQ funding and when that would make sense. And, those are typically multi-year like funding programs. So we have to make our requests at the right time to get into the right year of those programs. So we've been making sure that they're well aware of our needs, and we're doing really good coordination. There's also some managed lane opportunities that we've been in discussions with. That's something that we've been having discussions with, like on current service, but also for future service. How can that like help fund some of the operational needs as we wait for those federal formula funds to kick in after we start service? And then we certainly have been tracking the Citizens Initiative for the city of Sacramento for a sales tax measure. So we're tracking that as well. With that, I'll hand it over to Chris.
So I've talked a lot about the post railroad process. So we had a really active conversation with that, both just in the Christine and her team on a day-to-day basis on ongoing projects, but then David and I have been initiating a broader conversation with the UP leadership around around the program that the committee has defined. And the goal there really is to create clarity on both sides in terms of the projects that are being delivered, timeline and sequencing of those projects, which, as Christy noted, is super critical. And then also the service delivery that will happen as a result of those projects. Pleased to report we are making really good progress with UP. We're again in contact with their leadership on a weekly basis. They are actually going to be here next week to do an in-person meeting. And our goal really is to firm up and make sure everything we're planning here creates and opens up the service opportunities that we talked about. And I think we're in a good place with that. Now it's just putting some definition around it and making sure everyone's clear on who's doing what and when. And I would say that we're really close to that. But it's an ongoing conversation.
And then on the operational plan side, so as we plan these projects, as we sort of, and Dan sort of gives us the schedules and what the service is going to look like in the future, and we are aligned on that, we do need to have a very clear operational plan, right? So how do we actually deliver the service? And so the operational plan work stream really is a collaborative effort between pretty much all of the departments, like within the agencies, to ensure alignment on, well, what does it take to actually operate a train from Nacogdoches to San Jose? And that's everything from, well, how does the operational staffing plan need to change to ensure that we have the right bodies in place in 2031 to operate that? We've been assessing like our ticketing and Title VI compliance. So most of the stations in the Valley Road program don't include staff. So then how do we comply with our Title VI program in Sacramento when there's not a person at the station? So can we leverage partners or technology to solve that problem? We've been having those conversations. Well, how in our plans for current service, how do passenger amenities plan to change in the future, and how do we plan for that, like for the Valley Road operation 2031? And then connecting services that you heard from Dan, the throughway bus study will be a key to that, but we also have a lot of connecting services on the east side. So shuttles in Great America, we heard about earlier in the earlier meeting, as well as what are the other connecting services in Sacramento that we want to make sure we have, clear connections with. So all of that is kind of wrapped up into like a document that then spells all of that out. That document helps us prepare for operations, but it also is the tool by which we then can generate potential operational cost scenarios that feed into the funding strategy. So that we're actually delivering to our partners. This is what it really costs to operate the service. This is the funding levels that we need from the individual partners. One of the other areas that we are restarting as a part of the operational plan are memorandums of understandings with the station jurisdictions. So it's really important that everyone has a clear understanding of who is responsible for what. We are building infrastructure like in another jurisdiction, and we don't want there to be any confusion on who's handling security, who's on first for trash and waste receptacle clean, emptying all of kind of the nuts and bolts of that station going into operation. We have a very sort of robust sort of menu of options for those MOUs that was developed previously. And now we will be re-engaging in those discussions with Elk Grove and with Sacramento to ensure alignment on those. And it's really a good opportunity because sometimes you discover things you didn't know before. Oh, you already have someone in the area. Oh, well, can we partner on that contract rather than developing an entirely new one, right? So it's really becomes not just like who does what, but also how can we leverage all of our dollars together to get the best result for the community. So those things are also starting to ensure that we're prepared for operations. So those take some time, for us to reintroduce ourselves to some folks. And then the last work stream is the communication plan. You heard from Adele, for quite a long time, so we're not going to make him come out one more time. But right, this is sort of the summary of his presentation.
14 more slides.
14 more slides, yeah. But with that, the entire team would be happy to take any questions that you might have as we sort of covered a lot within that update.
Anybody have questions?
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
You guys, let's jump go first, Mr.
I just want to lead out and put something on the record because I think it needs to be said.
Yeah.
Worst Momo impression.
I'll take it, though. I'll take it.
I'm glad she's not watching people.
I hope she's not. She better not.
You're good. Just a couple of things, actually, one would be the Momo. You get a second shot at this.
Oh, great. Oh, that's right.
You know, really thinking about Valley Rail South and having read the congressional update that we got from for the commission meeting. There is some emphasis on rural connectivity. So what grant programs or what's available that we may be looking at, because we are looking at Valley South in the future, that we can tap into to keep the momentum going in that general planning direction, so.
I don't have an answer to that. We'll
Okay,
follow
that's,
up on that.
Momo would, but.
That's true.
The part of the reason why is some of these, they're issuing notices of funding opportunities. And they're all relatively new with their requirements and what they want. And so some of it is a matter of assessing it when it is published and saying, okay, how do we align the program to meet this new funding opportunity? And so it is a little bit of like, when it comes out, we assess and figure out the best way to position the project.
Sure. I just wanted to note that because that for Vito's benefit, the fact is that we may have some new emphasis on rural, and I think that will get us further down the road on the Valley Rail South side, if that's possible, if we do qualify. And I also want to note, Christina was talking about with the revalidating Enviro and the changes that happened when we haven't pulled our permits in time, and then the new California building codes where we have new regulations we now need to follow that we didn't need to follow 5 years ago when we thought we would have pulled permits sooner. So all of that is, again, another one of those spreadsheet Gantt charts. I don't know how you stay on top of that, but I am sure that we will have to update the Enviro on a number of projects that we've moved further down the line. So I guess my question is, how do you track that? Because that's a budget issue for us down the road to have to think about budgeting for something we already did to update it or to add something that we didn't think we were going to have. So.
Right, so on our capital team, we look at the environmental requirements, what we have already cleared, what the project is starting to look like moving forward. And we actually have a rather large Gantt chart for every single one of the projects that have been moved into design. And so environmental is always one of those pieces that we track along with it and that we incorporate into the project scope and in a sense into the project cost. And so it is something that we're looking farther down the line, knowing that we have to do at some point, especially since we've cleared a lot of these projects a bit earlier than now. So
and I just particularly thinking about Valley Rail South again,
Correct.
We're gonna have to come back around. But, so.
big on our radar.
The other piece of that for the community to just be in tune to is, both in the value and the direction we provided us to date in terms of the focus on the projects in the north and the impact on the projects in the south is when you change the funding mix, when you add federal money to a project, that changes your environmental process. And that change significantly changes the timelines. And as we all know, when you change timelines, you change budget. And so the plan for the projects in phase one is all funded with state dollars. And so as we've said, we have a very clear, delivery frame and processes on that. Because of that, when we start executing the remainder of the projects in the later phases, many of those, because the scale of those projects are going to require federal funding to get done just because they're that big. We're now, we'll be looking at federal environmental processes, which are going to be a little longer timelines, a little more money, a little harder to do. So it's just something for the community to keep in mind. We love those big federal dollars, but those big federal dollars also come with longer environmental timelines and other things. So it's just something to be aware of.
Thank you.
Vito, do you have any questions?
Saying no.
Hearing none? All right, thanks. Okay, committee member comments. Start with you.
I have to see it.
Oh.
You up.
Tough act to follow.
All right, Vito, you have any comments?
Too much information today.
We appreciate staff.
We do.
But so. All right, we have a closed session. Janice, gonna handle that?
Yes.
She here?
Yes, good morning. We have one item, anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 subsection E1. 3 potential cases, conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation, facts and circumstances believed to be unknown to potential plaintiffs. And with that, we are adjourned to closed session.
Okay, back to your parties.
Thank you.
We will be moving over in just a moment. Lord, you know. You don't mind if us to join on your screens?
Oh.
All right, we should be all back. And good to go.
Yes.
Thank you. As noted previously, we had one item on closed session, anticipated litigation, facts and circumstances unknown to potential plaintiffs. That action was discussed with the committee members, direction was given, and at this time, there is no other reportable action.
All right, thank you. And with that, we're adjourned until August 7th.
A great week, everyone. Weekend.
Thank you all.
Of course, you guys got a pretty good start on the weekend now while we were in your work.
No, we ended up, we were